The cyberpunk genre seems to be more popular than ever these days. People are hungry for urban dystopia, neon, cybernetics, and bumpin' synth beats. Sadly though, while we have to wait just a little longer for Cyberpunk 2077 to drop, Ghostrunner might serve as a tasty appetizer to tide us over. What's up everybody, I'm Kirk, and today I'll be taking a look at Ghostrunner to see if it's worth all the deaths, or if we should just settle on binging all the Cyberpunk trailers again. But before all that, please be sure to subscribe to this channel for all things Cyborg and Ninja. Alright, let's begin. Developed by One More Level, Slipgate Ironworks, and 3D Realms, and published by 505 Games and All In Games, lots of people behind this one, Ghostrunner is a first-person action platformer featuring lightning-fast one-hit kill combat and some expected and unexpected puzzle elements. The game is set in the distant cyberpunk future within Dharma Tower, a massive skyscraper housing the last of humanity. A once glorious human utopia, Dharma has descended into utter dystopia after it was put under the rule of Mara the Keymaster, a ruthless dictator who is killing it with her Dr. Octopus cosplay.
I'll handle things from here
You're
on.
alive. Can you hear me?
You play as Ghostrunner 74, also known as Jack, a cybernetic super soldier and peacekeeper. After being disabled for years, Jack awakens with no memory, but is directed to free an artificial intelligence called the Architect. The Architect recruits Jack to help him defeat Mara and free Dharma from her tentacled rule.
It's a miracle to survive a fall like that. Even for someone like you.
A Ghostrunner.
Along the way though, they meet Zoe, a member of a rebel group known as the Climbers. Together with his new allies, Jack ascends Dharma Tower to take Mara down once and for all.
This is Ghostrunner.
The Ghostrunner? Jack? You're awake!
The story of Ghostrunner is pretty interesting. At the center of the narrative is the concept of the needs of the few versus the needs of the many, with your support characters representing opposite sides. Spock would be all over this game.
Fascinating.
Architect represents the needs of the many, with a mission to save humanity as a whole, even if it means making tough sacrifices or causing collateral damage. Whereas Zoe represents the needs of the few, cherishing and protecting all life regardless of the consequences. And Jack is in the middle of it, as both characters need him to achieve their goals. It's not something the player has any choice in, the story plays out very linear, but it did lead me down a few thought rabbit holes, which I always appreciate from my media.
They cared for their families. I cared for their species. It's a matter of perspective, I suppose.
All in all, while the themes are solid, the story is a bit on the predictable side. In fact, a lot of players are probably going to be able to guess some of the major story beats. But it is told well, the beats are built up and paid off nicely, and the performances are good and believable, with my only complaint being that the villain comes off a bit two-dimensional. Regardless, it definitely keeps things rolling in between the slicing and dicing. Now, as many of you can already tell, I played through Ghostrunner on PlayStation 4, which at first was problematic. Upon release, the game was suffering from numerous frame rate dips, something you don't want in a game all about fast, fluid movement. And there was a horrendous amount of screen tearing. Now, in the days following release, a couple patches were released. That did improve the frame rate a little, though dips were still frequent. And they did improve the screen tearing, but did not eliminate it. The game wasn't unplayable, I was still able to enjoy it, but I was prepared to say if you had a choice, the PC version was looking like the way to go, since it had none of these issues at launch, as far as I could tell. And what do you know, a few days ago while I was putting together this edit, a patch was finally released that fixed the screen tearing issues, stabilized the game further, and got this version up to snuff. So I can now confidently say, if you're planning on playing on the PlayStation 4, you're good. Well, for the most part. The frame rate still dips, but not nearly as bad as release, and the game does suffer from texture pop-in after loading, but then again, what Unreal Engine game doesn't? Otherwise, Ghostrunner is a decent, if not uneven looking game. The lighting does look good, and there are some nice reflections on display, and while the texture work is fine, the game overall had sort of a washed out look to it, at least to me. It does nail its cyberpunk aesthetic with flying colors. In fact, the game really starts to show its visual personality when you hit the upper city levels. And I gotta say, I never get tired of bright neon and large LED screens.
So where do we go? What's the next step?
Now, just to address the big next-gen elephant in the room, Ghostrunner is slated for release on the PlayStation 5 and Series X next year, and current owners of it will be able to upgrade to those versions for free. And judging by how this game looks now running on a PC with RTX, I think console owners have a lot to look forward to. Last but not least, the game features a new soundtrack by Daniel Deluxe, a prominent retro wave producer whose synth beats fit this game like a glove. In terms of gameplay, the best way I can describe Ghostrunner is that it's a mixture of Mirror's Edge and Hotline Miami. Like Mirror's Edge, the game is a first-person platformer thick with twitchy challenges, while running, dodging obstacles, zip lines, and even platforms you can hack. And like Hotline Miami, everything is a one-shot kill for you and your enemies. If this game sounds hard to you, well, it is. You are going to die a lot. Like, a lot. Thank God checkpoint reloads are nearly instantaneous, or else this game would have been a nightmare.
Why did you program me not to use guns?
Dharma is full of technology that is all too vulnerable to accidental destruction.
Your main weapon is your sword, which slices through enemies like butter. And if you're fast enough, you can deflect projectiles, which is pretty sweet. A game of this style has to nail its controls, and thankfully Ghostrunner's control scheme is, for the most part, tight and responsive. There are some things that can take a little getting used to, but in general the controls will have you feeling like a true cyborg ninja in no time.
Hope you're not afraid of heights.
Wall running feels fantastic. In fact, this is some of the best wall running I've experienced since Titanfall 2. Every once in a while, the wall running can fail to activate due to coming at it from a funny angle, which is frustrating, but these moments are few and far between. Indeed, wall running gets a lot of praise, but the game's dash mechanic is no slouch either. By the tap of a button, you can quick dash in whatever direction you choose, multiple times even, depending on your upgrades. We'll cover those later, with a short cooldown in between. Holding down the dash button sends the player into a slow-mo sensory boost, in which they can move right and left to dodge projectiles or be able to adjust their aim if they have a jump go a little funky. A very solid feature that often means the difference between life and death. Rounding out the movement arsenal is sliding and a grapple hook, both of which feel great to use. There's also in-level timed power-ups like high jumping, super speed, and shurikens, which are great for combat but also needed for puzzles. The enemies of Ghostrunner are a rogues gallery of cyber thugs, robots, and hells yeah, ninjas. Each enemy requires a different maneuver to defeat. For example, the guys with shields have to be jumped over or dashed around, whereas the long projectiles from bipedal robots typically have to be slid under, and ninjas can be parried mid-assault if you tap the attack button. And as you might guess, a lot of the challenge comes from the differing combinations of enemies and the muscle memory needed to defeat them. To make things trickier, sometimes enemies are protected by shields generated by these balls, these big old balls, which you'll have to take out before you can go on the attack. You often have to be thinking several moves ahead, or else you'll find yourself killing one enemy only to be blindsided by another nearby. Once you do get a good sense of the tells and the timing, you'll find yourself pulling off some slick maneuvers, making for some very satisfying gameplay, especially in the late game stages. Plus, the game does an excellent job of steadily evolving the challenge as you go through the game, making sure you get the hang of an enemy or an obstacle before throwing you a curveball. And while the game isn't without its cheap deaths, for the most part the difficulty is fair and your failures will feel like your fault.
Oh, this is troublesome.
The game also features a handful of tough boss fights that acutely challenge your platforming abilities. They're a good time, but prepare to be hitting that retry button a lot.
Welcome to Cybervoid. Time to fix you up.
Breaking up the combat and traversal are the Cybervoid sequences. These consist largely of platform challenges, collectathons, and puzzles, which were surprisingly tricky.
Not bad. You're beginning to adjust.
While enjoyable, these portions aren't nearly as fun as the main gameplay, but they never overstay their welcome, and they do give you access to Ghostrunner's abilities.
Perfect form.
There are 4 special abilities you gain throughout the game, which when fully charged can give you an edge in battle. Blink lets you target and slice through multiple enemies, Tempest lets you blast enemies away, which is a lot of fun to do. Surge lets you shoot out a blade beam, and Overlord lets you hack enemies to fight for you. The abilities are a lot of fun to use and integral to getting through many of the tougher stages in one piece. They're also upgradable. One aspect I thought was pretty neat was the upgrade system. Upgrades are handled like a tetramino puzzle, where you have to place pieces, representing the specific upgrade, on a grid which becomes more and more open as you progress. It presents the player with a lot of choices and a lot of brain teasers. In fact, it reminded me a little of the chip system from Nier Automata. It's a unique system, however there's a few things that could have been added to make it a little better. Customizable presets would have been nice to have, letting players make multiple builds that they can switch between instantly. It can be a little tedious and annoying to have to move around and reconfigure the pieces every time you want to switch up your build for a given situation. Also, while I'm sure it flies in the face of the developer's intention, I don't think it would have been the worst thing in the world to have the option to auto-populate the board according to a specific preset, such as favoring offense, movement, or one of your abilities. There are some players that are simply not going to have the patience for this, and the system can be a hefty disruption to gameplay. That being said, I do appreciate the developer trying to do something different, and overall it is a successful system. Ghostrunner is a gem of 2020, a great experience for those looking for an immersive, twitchy challenge. While the initial issues on the PlayStation 4 were regrettable, they never fully got in the way of its inspired gameplay, and good on the developers for getting fixes out rapidly, although it shouldn't have released with issues to begin with. This truly is the Cyborg Ninja Simulator you never knew you wanted. Please be sure to let me know your thoughts on Ghostrunner in the comments if you're currently playing it or planning to. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to subscribe, like, and share with your friends. It is a massive help for this channel. Looking for some Cyberpunk action on the go? Then maybe check out my Switch review of Ion Fury. I post videos weekly, so be sure to hit that bell so you are the first to see them. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.